Hello, thanks for coming today. North American solar eclipse, August 21st, 2017. That's why everyone showed up, right? It's not a photo, okay. So, my name is Christopher Witt. I'm the senior technical writer for optics here at B&H. That's Todd Vorenkamp. He's a senior creative content writer for our sister site, Explora. If you've seen any of the solar articles in your email, chances are either Todd and or myself have written them, sometimes together, sometimes separately. So this is what we're here for. On August 21st, we have the solar eclipse. It starts on the west coast in Oregon around 9 a.m. local time, cuts diagonally across, going out to sea in South Carolina around 4 p.m. So it's an all-day affair for everyone in the country. At the point of greatest duration, so not everyone sees the same length of an eclipse because of the physics, so I won't bore you with that, but the greatest duration is about halfway between Nashville and St. Louis. Their partial eclipse starts at 11:52 Central Time. Totality starts at 1:20. It lasts for 2 minutes and 40 seconds and moves back into a partial eclipse, which ends at 2:47. Now, everyone in North America is going to get at least a partial eclipse, if not in the totality path. So Seattle will get 92%. Their partial eclipse starts at 9:08 and goes to 11:39. Los Angeles gets 62. Las Vegas, Dallas at 75. Chicago 87. Atlanta 97. We get 71% obscuration. If you saw Margarita's event, she had a great animation for what it's going to look like in the path totality and what we get up here. So I definitely watch that because it's a really cool animation. It really kind of makes my presentation not as great now. And then, well out of the path totality, many areas in Canada and Mexico will still be getting 25 to 20% obscuration. Most of it, 50% obscuration. So anywhere in North America is going to get a great astronomical event. This is just a larger detail. You see all the way up here, we have 50%. All the way down here in Mexico, still 50%. And then off the map, they're still getting 20%, 25%. So, I hate to be the fun police, but we have to talk safety when you're talking about looking and staring at the sun for minutes, if not hours. So, who needs solar glasses? We all need solar glasses, and we're all got these today, right? You're going to see them everywhere between now and August. You need to get them. It's safe to look at the sun without solar glasses only during that short period of totality. Anytime you can see the sun, you need to be wearing ISO certified for safe solar viewing eyewear. Even if you're in the path of totality, you need to wear eye protection at any point during the partial eclipse before and after totality. For those of you, like our colleague Todd, who is going to the eclipse, what you're looking for is this diamond ring effect. So what happens is, as the moon goes in front of the sun, this occurs when a mountain valley catches the last piece of the sun shining through, so it looks like a diamond. And then the coronal ring that starts coming up looks like the ring. So when you see that first diamond ring effect, everyone's going to ooh and ah. That's when you take your glasses off and you can look at totality without your glasses. On the other end of the totality, you'll get another diamond ring effect. As soon as you see that second flare, all your eye protection goes back on. You want to make sure you're staying safe. And yes, the danger is very real. Now, we have a natural aversion to staring at the sun. If we look at it too long, it hurts. But we don't have pain receptors for radiation, ultraviolet and infrared radiation. So while you might have protection that reduces the intense visible white light, we don't have any protection for the UV radiation that can cause the damage. So you have to make sure that you're safe when you're viewing, because that UV and IR can actually really cause the damage to your eyes very quickly. So about 2 years ago, a bunch of optics manufacturers got together with NASA to make sure that the public was going to be safe for viewing this event. we're estimating about 350 million people will participate in this event. So think about that for a second. 350 million people. This is going to be the most viewed solar eclipse in human history. It's going to be the most photographed, the most studied, and because of social media, the most shared. So we want to make sure that everyone is safe. So again, the optics manufacturers got together with NASA and they came up with a new standard for safe solar viewing. And it's ISO 12312-2:2015. You'll see it sometimes without that colon 2015, but 12312-2 is the new ISO safety standard for safe solar viewing. It blocks 99.99% of the intense visible white light and 100% of UV and IR radiation. This is the only accepted rating that you want to look for. Anything else might not be what you need. So again, you want to be safe. So before you use these ever, anytime, you want to inspect them, make sure that they're not damaged in any way. And to do that, you just hold them up to a bright light, whether it's a studio light like this, your cell phone flashlight. If you can see little pinholes of light come through, throw them away, get a new pair. Don't take a chance. Always have extras. These, we're giving them away free, so you know they can't be that expensive, but they are safe. So pick up extra pairs. You don't want to miss this event because your lens ripped or you lost them or whatever. And you want to make sure that you get your stuff from reputable dealers. 350 million people are going to be seeing this. The events like this are going to attract a lot of fraud. Don't wait until the day of the event to buy it at a bodega or a street vendor or some guy wandering a field in Nashville handing these out for $3 for $1. You don't know him, you don't know where they're coming from, and you certainly don't know how safe they are. Don't take the chance. This is your eyes. We want to make sure that your vision is the same on August 22nd as it was on August 20th. There we go. All right, so what don't you use to view the sun? Don't use anything from a previous solar eclipse, like from the 70s, that you dug out of your grandfather's closet. Just throw it away, get new ones. You'll hear talk about Mylar solar filters. This is not the same thing as your kids' Mylar birthday balloons. Don't deflate the balloon and hold it up. It's not going to protect you. It's not the same thing. Don't use really dark sunglasses. Don't use tinted soda or beer bottles. That is not going to help. Don't peek through your fingers and think this is going to protect you. And don't use welding glass. The problem with welding glass is that there are a lot of different tint densities, and you don't know exactly which one is going to work best. And they don't always have the best IR protection and UV protection. So leave the welding mask at home, pick up a pair of solar glasses. And you only want to use ISO certified 12312-2. Don't use anything that isn't that, because you're not sure what you're going to get. All right, so that was the safety portion. And I'm sorry if that was boring, but it's kind of a big deal because we only have 2 eyes, and we want to make sure that everyone that's participating in this event is safe, and your families are safe, and everyone else is safe. So now we're viewing the sun. How do you view the sun? Well, most of us are going to be viewing it in broadband filters or white light filters. So if you saw Margarita's presentation, this should look familiar. If you went to school, this hopefully looks familiar. So this is the visible spectrum, right? Roy G. Biv? Yeah? So what a white light filter does is it just tones down all that intense white light. So all this together, right, makes white. This isn't new, right? Okay.
What?
So the vast majority of people are going to get white light filters. And again, it just tones this down. This is what the sun looks like through a white light filter. The one on the left, I took through my telescope's white light filter. Todd took this one. And it's not that you're not going to see a lot of great stuff. Todd pulled out this awesome sunspot right here. I have a couple of big sunspots over on about 10, 11 o'clock over there. So still cool stuff, even with regular white light filters. What are your options for viewing the sun with white light filters? You have glasses and cards, binoculars, add-on filters, and telescopes. So the ubiquitous solar glasses, right? Quick and easy. They fit like any other glasses. But let's say that you have oversized frames that these don't fit over. then you can just get these cards. And it's a little heavier card stock, same filter, just hold it up to your face. Or they make plastic framed and lensed solar glasses. These are a little more durable, and I would say if you're planning on photographing the sun and you're going to be practicing for a few weeks or even a couple months before the event, get the little more durable ones. That way you know you're going to be safe. They're much more hardy, and they're not going to break as easily, and they're certainly not going to rip because the lenses are plastic. If you want to add some magnification, you go with solar binoculars. These are from Celestron. They have dedicated solar filters inside of them. So 10 times the magnification, they're going to work great. For smaller people, children especially, you have these little dedicated sunoculars, 6x30 from Lunt. So these are great. They're a little lower magnification. They're only 6 times, but they get really small. So if you have small face, children's, if you're traveling, you want to put them in a pack or a pocket, they work great. Then you have these from Mead, and these yellow caps are the solar filter. These just pop right off. So with them on, they're safe for solar viewing. You take them off and you can use them for nighttime astronomical viewing if you wanted to do comet watching, if you want to do lunar watching. What I like about these, if you're going to be in the path of totality, is that you can leave the caps on during the partial eclipse. During totality, pop them off. You can look at the sun, 10 times magnification. Then for the rest of the eclipse, pop them back on. You can watch the second half of the partial eclipse. Then you have these add-on filters. So that one on the left is an aluminum ring with a mylar filter. This is a cardboard one, and it ships like this, nice and flat. And it folds into a cap that just goes over your eyepiece, your objective for a binocular. And this, from Mead, is an aluminum ring with a glass filter. And these are for binoculars, spotting scopes, telescopes, any kind of optic that you already have that you want to adapt for viewing the sun. And these come in a single or a 2-pack, so if you have binoculars, and they come in multiple sizes. All of these come in multiple sizes. So you can pick up a 2-pack for binoculars or multiple optics if you want. Or you can view the sun with a telescope. This is the telescope that I'm using. This is the Virtuoso from Skywatcher. Tabletop mount, fully motorized for lunar, solar, and star tracking. But most importantly, for what we're talking about, is that filter right there. This is a solar filter that comes with it, and it just pops right over the front of it. This is from my Optron. This is a dedicated white light solar scope with a go-to mount. So it's a full-size tripod, nice compact mount, dedicated solar scope. Get a nighttime telescope, drop that on instead, and you can use it day and night. And then similar to the binoculars we saw before, this is by Mead. That's the front cap, pops off for nighttime viewing, pop it on for solar viewing. So most of us are going to be viewing it in white light, like I said. When I say most of us, I'm talking greater than 95%. But you can view the sun in what's called narrowband or targeted viewing. So that's the visual spectrum. That little sliver right there is the hydrogen band. Within the hydrogen band, you have that tiny little sliver right in the middle. Now, hydrogen is one of the most common elements on the sun, so it's the easiest to isolate, but it's still very difficult. You're talking maybe virtually impossible when you think about the math involved and how someone can engineer to view that tiny little thing. But they do, and they also do helium, calcium, and sodium. Now, each one of those has their own look to it that reveals different portions of the sun. So hydrogen comes out in red. Calcium, I think, is bluish. Sodium is yellowish. So they all reveal different areas of the sun for different kinds of purposes. Now, because of our atmosphere, we have a dense atmosphere, we got a lot of stuff in it, moisture, particulates. Plus the Earth is rotating on its axis, and then the Earth is rotating around the sun. There's a lot of moving parts that we're dealing with. So when you're trying to isolate this one tiny little narrow band, you have to have a way of tuning your telescope to compensate for all those shifts in the light. So not only do telescope and hydrogen filter manufacturers have to figure out how to isolate that one little band, they also have to figure out how to tune it to compensate for all the variables that make it difficult to see it. So this is what the sun looks like through a hydrogen alpha filter. Actually, it's what it looks like through that hydrogen alpha filter that Todd will get to. We took this in my backyard a couple weeks ago. So you see all that surface granulation, all that surface texture. You see the prominence over here, that enormous flare that's coming out. On the left-hand side, opposite it, you see all that stuff that might be starting to be a flare or a prominence. You have, this is a sunspot right over here. So that's the difference between seeing it in white light versus hydrogen alpha. You're getting a lot more detail that you would normally not see. And how do you view it? You can do add-on filters or dedicated solar scopes. This one fits right into the back of the telescope. You put an eyepiece right on top, and you're viewing in hydrogen alpha. This goes onto the front of a telescope to adapt a nighttime scope for hydrogen alpha viewing. This one, very similar to this. This is a blocking filter that goes in the back, and it just helps tone down the light a little bit to make it a little more comfortable to see. Then that's a calcium filter. Or you can get a dedicated solar scopes. This is the Coronado PST. That stands for Personal Solar Telescope. This is the perennial favorite for solar viewers. It's been around forever. It's about this big, weighs a couple pounds. It's amazing. Lunt makes this one. This has a pressure tuner to really get yourself on band. It's much more precise than the tilt tune that the PST uses. And then Daystar Filters makes a temperature tuned one that is super precise. And most of their business is for research purposes. So this is one of the best solar viewing scopes that you'll ever see. And this is a side-by-side comparison. Hydrogen alpha on the left, white light on the right. This is actually taken within minutes of each other. This one was taken with my telescope. That was taken with that setup right there. So same day, completely different pictures, but still pretty cool because, I mean, sunspots through a simple telescope. I'm going to turn this over to Todd now. He's going to talk about photographing the sun, which is probably what most of you wanted to do anyway.
Thank you.
Make sure you're on.
Thank you very much. So if I say something funny, can you guys laugh loud? Because when I've seen Event Space stuff in the past, there's like zingers coming constantly from the speaker and no laughter. Just like right now. There we go. All right.
We'll add crickets in there.
So I'm not an expert on eclipse photography. I know that's disappointing to everyone that's tuned in and in this room, but I'm just being honest. This is the only solar eclipse I've ever photographed. That was in San Diego back in 2012. And that's about a 76% obscuration, which is kind of what you're going to see if you're in New York for the eclipse in August. This was shot unfiltered. I was playing Frisbee. The eclipse happened. It was super cloudy. The clouds semi-broke. I ran to my car, took that shot with a 80 to 200 lens, put the camera back in the car, and went back to the game. Because it was socked and cloudy that day. So. All right, just like Chris started with safety, I'm going to start with safety. You don't want to lose your vision because of the solar eclipse. So I'm just taking photos. I don't need to invest in a $2.50 pair of solar glasses, right? I'm just going to take pictures. No, you need them. And why do you need them? Because you're going to want to look at the eclipse, right? If you're just going to look through your camera at the entire event, you might as well stay home and watch it on TV. Also, when I'm going to get into this later, but when you're aiming the camera, you want to be able to look at what you're aiming at. And in this case, it's the sun, so you're going to need the protection. Second thing is enjoyment. What you don't want to do is go to the eclipse and fight with your camera, spend the 2 minutes and 30 seconds of totality in your menu, setting up your color space or something. You know, like that's going to be the worst possible thing ever. For many of us, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. So you want to be there and you want to be present. Don't wrestle with the gear. Don't fight technology. If the picture's not going to work for you, just put on your solar glasses, look up, and enjoy the show. And this is likely going to be the most photographed. It is going to be the most photographed eclipse in history. Probably the most viewed eclipse in history. So people with probably better gear, better techniques will be getting awesome photos, and you can steal their images later and put them on your computer screen. Don't sell them, because that's illegal. But the point is, a lot of times we photograph things to prove we were there, right? Everyone else is going to be there too. So the worst thing to do is like, I didn't see the eclipse because I was messing with my tripod. And I'll say this, it's not a casual photographic event. You could probably wander out there, point your camera at totality, get a fairly decent shot. But if you want to do it the right way, you have to do some pre-planning and stuff. So don't think you're just gonna grab your point and shoot out of your bag and point it up and get an awesome photo and move on. So at a minimum, you're gonna need solar glasses. Do we need to go back to that other slide? Why? No? All right. And a camera. Those are the only two things you actually need. And you can use any type of camera, actually. From a point and shoot to a DSLR to a Horseman. I mean, it depends on how intense you want to get in. Whoop. So solar glasses and camera. You can photograph totality with nothing else besides a camera. But if you want to photograph the partial phases, you're going to need a solar filter for your camera, a tripod. The event's between 3 and 4 hours long from start to finish. If you want to hold your camera up, pointed straight up in the sky for that long without a tripod, go ahead. I'll recommend not doing that. Cable release, especially during totality, you're going to be doing low light photography, so you don't want to have vibration through the camera when you're punching the shutter release. So get a remote release. And you need a plan. Very similar to what Chris just went through, we have white light filters. Mylar, which is the same material that you have in the glasses, the silvering. Do I get the kiss, Alan?
Yeah.
All right. I didn't hear it. Mylar gives you a nice yellow, kind of natural sun color, right? That was taken a couple weeks ago. Neutral density filters give you a more monochrome look. One thing is, a lot of people are leaning towards the neutral density because they're glass. This is actually film, but you can see there's really no, I mean, that edge is pretty sharp. It's not like, I mean, you're shooting something that's exactly 1 astronomical unit away. So you can also see a little bit of detail around the edges of the sun. Same thing here. These were shot in quick succession. And then intermediate filters like the Daystar camera cork, which I have set up over here. That's some guy taking pictures of the sun. These are the sunglasses you don't want to use. These are the sunglasses you do. This brings up a good point, though. You're taking photos in the middle of the day, so sunscreen, hat, all that stuff. Don't forget that part, because solar eclipse sunburn is probably not cool either. And here's a picture from the camera cork. We actually shot this right down the street at Hudson Yards. Sunspot activity, prominences, pretty cool. Those things are a little spendy. If you're going to get serious into solar photography, that's a cool thing to have. If you're just going to shoot the eclipse and move on into life, I wouldn't. Unless your budget allows it, I wouldn't recommend it. And if your budget allows it, send Alan an email and buy me a Daystar. We had to borrow one. This is the photo we just saw straight out of the camera. So I had to do a little processing to get that detail out. You can barely see the prominences there until I did some post-processing. So it's not one-stop shopping. And here's a closer view. Ooh, it's pretty cool. The sun's really, it's actually, we know a lot about the sun, but we don't know everything about the sun. So it's a cool thing to study, a cool thing to see. I mean, I took this photograph. I never, in my wildest dreams, thought I'd shoot the sun in hydrogen alpha and get something cool like that, you know? Let's talk about focal lengths of lenses. two different approaches for solar eclipse photography. You can do a wide angle shot, which includes some landscape in the foreground or a building or something. Like this is right out of Shutterstock. It's an image from Iceland. I mean, if you have cool mountains like that, why not shoot wide angle, right? If you're in the middle of the Midwest, you might just want to go with a telephoto and look at the sun itself, unless it's a particularly attractive cornfield or something. No comments from the Midwest, please. Or you can use a telephoto. That's the B&H bipod. We don't sell them anymore. That was a Canon 1200 millimeter lens that we had in the used store for a while. And if you shoot telephoto, you can do something like this composite, where you show the different phases of the partial eclipse and then totality, and then move on. And that's what the sun looks like from your iPhone 6 with a filter held above it. So if you want to shoot the eclipse with an iPhone, you might leave disappointed, unless that's your thing. This is what it looks like on a 50 millimeter lens. Almost the same. Again, pretty small. This is a 300 millimeter lens on an APS-C camera, so 450 millimeter equivalent. And this is a 1,000 millimeter spotting scope on an APS-C camera, so that's a 1,500 millimeter equivalent. The images are a little bit cropped, but you can get a sense of the size. I mean, we probably just cropped off the edge to make it centered. And this is a 500 millimeter reflex lens on an APS-C camera, so again, 250 or 1,500 millimeter. That's actually with a 2-time teleconverter, sorry. And this was interesting. This was San Diego in 2003 during the big fires they had there. This is unfiltered. It was pretty. That's pretty much what the sun looked like overhead midday, and a lot of sunspot activity too. And here's a comparison of what totality looks at different focal lengths for a full frame camera. One thing we'll talk about again, but during totality is the only time you'll ever see the corona of the sun. So if you have a 2,000 millimeter lens and you're digging it, that's fine, but you're gonna lose a lot of the corona. This shows the inner part of the corona, but the corona actually, I think, extends, I think I read 8 solar diameters, which is pretty significant size. And again, I'm gonna get ahead of my slides here, 12 stop dynamic range between the inner corona and the outer corona. So you're just seeing the inner side here. My plan is to shoot with that 300 millimeter lens, which is gonna be in between these two focal lengths, so I should get most of the corona. If you want to get closer, you can get closer, but I'll leave it up to you. There's great lenses. The 150 to 600 millimeter, Sigma makes them, and Tamron. That's a pretty decent focal length for the Eclipse, I would say, because you can zoom out to 600 millimeters or zoom into 600 millimeters, get some close detail, then zoom out for more corona. And the cool thing about our solar system and our place in the solar system is the moon is the same size as the sun in the sky. And if you don't believe me, go outside on August 21st and they'll line up so you can compare the size. So, good laugh, thank you guys. Don't have to run the laugh track on that one, Alan. 1,500 millimeter equivalent again of the moon, almost identically sized to the sun. And that leads into, if you want to see what the sun's going to look like in your lens, go take a picture of the full moon, and you'll get a good feel for it. Other ways of shooting the eclipse: digiscoping. Spotting scopes are very cool. You can watch birds, you can look around town. That's the politically correct way of saying that. I had a spotting scope down near South Street Seaport, and I watched a guy playing video games over in Brooklyn on his big screen TV in his living room. Pretty cool. They can do cool things with them besides that. You can also rig up a camera to it, and you have a relatively inexpensive super telephoto lens. That's what my rig looks like connected to my spotting scope. I have a camera adapter here, and you stick the camera on, and I shoot through the spotting scope. Another view. The other way is indirect viewing. This is the only way you can view the eclipse and not have to buy those expensive $2.50 glasses. Basically, you set up a projection. This gentleman has a telescope projecting it, but you can just hold up a piece of cardboard with a hole in it, and it'll project an image of the eclipse on the ground. Probably used to be a really cool way to do that before everybody had a camera in their pocket. And then I'm going to turn it back to Chris so we can talk about shooting through telescopes.
Hello again.
And I'll be back, so don't miss me.
Don't forget to turn your mic off.
Yeah.
So, since Todd's the shooter, I'm the astronomer, I'm going to take over this little part quick. I'll promise not to go too far. So, that's my telescope at home. Tiny little thing. This is actually a 90 millimeter Maxikov Cassegrain design. It's got a 1250 millimeter focal length, and I have my solar filter on it. So, this little protuberance right here is my eyepiece holder. That's where my eyepiece would normally go into for direct viewing of the sun or the stars or the moon or whatever. So they have threads for standard T adapters, T-rings, built onto that visual back. So for, I think, about $12, I got this Canon T-ring that goes right into my camera, screw it right on in. Now my optical tube assembly is my telephoto lens. The focuser for my telescope becomes the focuser for the camera. This is a digiscoping adapter, much like what Todd was talking about with his spotting scope. It's made by Carson, and this is what it looks like when it's actually in person. All right. So it's fully adjustable. You have this little hole right in the middle there that you line up your camera lens with. You squeeze it, and this 4-point connection centers that right on your eyepiece. So in this picture, I have a 25 millimeter eyepiece on my telescope, so it's producing 50 magnification in this application right onto my iPhone. And that's the picture I took with it. So the original shot is on the left. This is zoom crop with a little bit of effects. But even just dropping that right onto my telescope eyepiece, I pulled out this enormous sunspot and 3 smaller sunspots. So it's a great way of capturing an image, especially if you want to share on social media. I don't know if your friends care. Mine certainly don't, and I didn't get a lot of likes when I did it, but it certainly was cool to be able to do. So I'm sure as we get closer to the solar eclipse and I post that, maybe I'll get 3 likes. Who knows? If your telescope doesn't have that nifty little threads on it, you have a refractor or a reflector telescope, and you just want to take pictures with your camera, you have these adapters for eyepieces. So this is the main adapter here. This barrel drops right into your focuser. Your T-ring goes on here, and then that's what it looks like on there. So you have some options if you are an astronomer and you want to take pictures of the solar eclipse, but you don't want to invest in new lenses and stuff. You have a camera body, get a couple of adapters, and a solar filter for your front aperture, and you're good to go with that. Now Todd with his plan.
I want to, before we get into the plan, I want to go back to the filters for cameras. We've been getting a lot of questions. I got one just this morning. Can I use 2 circular polarizers stacked on top of each other to shoot the sun? Maybe, I don't know. You can try it. I would recommend just buying a solar filter. They're not hellaciously expensive. If you have a Mylar filter, you can look through your optical viewfinder. The Mylar blocks out the radiation and the light, so you can view through an optical viewfinder. If you're using a neutral density filter, the recommendation is at least 16 stops and no optical viewfinders. Some boxes have warnings. This brand does not have a warning, but I have one that says, do not use an optical viewfinder, because my theory is it doesn't block some of the ultraviolet and the IR, just blocks the visible light. The other thing I've noticed, I've looked at 3 different brands of these neutral density filters. They all have different light transmission properties. One said it was 16 stops, but I could see my hand through it. So, I mean, if you're going to use live view, use electronic viewfinder if you're using those. If you have the Mylar that looks like a mirror, you can look through optical viewfinder. So, again, anybody need me to repeat that stuff, that warning? No? So the plan. For the show, you want to get your kit, your filters, cable release, anything that you're missing from what we ran through before. Make sure you bring extra memory, extra battery power. Murphy's Law is your card's going to get full right before totality. Your battery's going to run out right before totality because you've been out there shooting all day. So bring everything you think you need and then add 2 more. Pre-focus. We're long past the days of the hard infinity stop on lenses. So focusing on the sun's not, it's not the easiest thing in the world. I'm using a mirrorless camera over there with focus peaking, so I can get the edge. I'll get focus peaking on the edge of the sun. If you want, you can set your focus up by focusing on the moon. If you try to go out the night before the eclipse and focus on the moon, I have bad news for you. The moon is not going to be up the night before the eclipse. Something about how it orbits and how the next day, in the middle of the day, it's going to be right next to the sun. So the day before, it's actually right next to the sun too. So like 2 weeks before the eclipse, you can go out and focus your camera on the moon, get some gaffer tape, tape the focus ring, and then don't touch it until then. Or focus on an extremely distant object, depending on where you are. Get to infinity. Sorry. Also, celestial location and planning. If you go, this is one thing you can scout the day before, but you go to your location and look at the path of the sun at that time of day. The next day is going to be very similar in position, azimuth, altitude. So if you're like, hey, this is a great spot, and then on August 20th you go there and the sun is conveniently behind a bridge or a building or a big tree, it's time to find a new spot. It's probably, yeah. Clouds, it might be, yeah, the 1% is behind a cloud. Hopefully only on the 20th. Do some research. I showed you examples of focal lengths and what you're going to get. There's a ton of eclipse photos. This is the first North American eclipse, like good one, in decades. So all of our neighbors haven't, unless they're eclipse chasers, haven't been photographing these. But for the last 10 years, a lot of photographers have been traveling far and wide across the world with digital cameras and making spectacular photos of eclipses. And they're super nerdy types like us, so they've recorded their focal length, what type of camera they're using, and their settings, all that. So find those photos online, look at their settings, look at what their exposure data was, and keep that in the back of your head and put that into your plan. If you find a shot you like and you want to emulate it, look at that data. The sun is generally the same brightness every day, and it's going to be obscured in the same exact way. So the eclipse from 2 years ago in Australia or something looks very, very similar to the one that's going to happen here. And make a checklist so you don't forget any of this stuff. I guarantee I'm going to forget something. And then I'll remember this moment. And we'll do another show. Be like, ooh. So the progression of the eclipse is as the moon starts blocking the sun, you get partial phases, then you get to totality, and then it slides off the sun, and you get partial phases again. So it's like three big parts of the show. As Chris went over, the start of totality is that first diamond ring. Once that happens, then you take your solar filter off. If you're shooting the eclipse in hydrogen alpha, you got to take your intermediate filter off. Not the fastest thing to do. If you have a screw-on filter, again, it's still, it takes time. So there's they do sell filters like this with a locking screw. You can just unlock that screw, pop it off. Much easier than the fully threaded filter. You're probably going to be excited. You're probably going to be sweaty palms. I've dropped filters before. I've cross-threaded filters before. Figure out your plan. Figure out what works for you and your manual dexterity and all that stuff. So diamond ring, filters off. Shoot through totality. You get Bailey's beads, which is where the very last remnants of the sun shine through the mountains and the valleys of the moon's surface. And then totality is, you can see prominences, corona, and these are not my photos, so no applause. Pretty cool stuff though. When the moon is blocking the sun, it's going to get dark. So if you're not familiar with low light and nighttime photography, you're going to have to get familiar really fast. Because for about 2 minutes and 40 seconds, you're going to have nighttime photography. So yeah. Practice shooting in the dark. Practice photographing the moon. I consider myself a night photographer. My camera is rarely out in the daytime. So I can set up at night, I can focus at night, I can go through my settings in the dark way faster than most people. So I'm confident that I'll be okay on part of this, except for the whatever I forgot. But again, 2 minutes and 40 seconds of a once in a lifetime experience. You don't want to be like, ooh, I've never taken a photo when it's not high noon, So talked about the corona. This is the only time you're ever going to be able to see it with your own eyes. It's the only time your camera is going to see it. So choose your focal length and then set your exposure. Again, a 12 stop dynamic range between the inner part of the corona and the outer part, which extends well past the solar disk. So make sure you take that into consideration. In order to capture as much of the corona as possible, bracket your exposures. During totality, you're probably going to put it on what they used to call motor drive. Now it's continuous shooting, and just start firing images. Bracket those images, so maybe the mid corona is looking cool, maybe the outer corona looks good, maybe the inner, but you want to get a variety of exposures to get your best image. And memorize that for the exposure settings. Good, all right, cool. I can go back. Lots of exposure charts online. NASA's website has one reproduced from Fred Aspanak, who's known as Mr. Eclipse. This one is ISO 200 based on his numbers. Again, outer corona, mid corona, inner corona, diamond ring, Bailey's beads, prominences, lots of different exposures for a single event that doesn't take very long. So again, have a plan, bracket heavily, and you can try to catch as much as you can. You can see how bright it is. Like at f4, at ISO 200, Bailey's beads is 1/32,000th of a second. That's how, if that doesn't show you how bright the sun is, I don't know what else would. And after totality, you get the diamond ring, comes back, put your filters back on, take a deep breath, and enjoy the partial phases on the backside. And then when it's all over, start planning for the next one. So most important thing, practice, practice, practice. I've been shooting the moon for decades. Shooting the sun is a new challenge. It's very similar in a lot of ways because you're aiming the camera at a very small target and a very big swath of sky. The biggest difference is that small object is incredibly bright. So looking towards it, pointing the camera and looking anywhere in that vicinity is difficult. You put eclipse glasses on, you're protected, you can see the sun. Now I can't see my camera that I'm trying to aim. So you gotta like go back and forth between the glasses and the camera trying to get it set up. If you go out on August 21st and you're like, I'm gonna just point my camera at the sky and take this picture, you're gonna be, whoa, this is difficult. I've also been doing this photography thing for a long time too, so I'm getting ahead of my slides here. I was like, that's the problem when I memorize my presentation. So super bright. Tripod camera position. How often do we shoot straight up into the air? Not very often. All of a sudden, like I can't look through this viewfinder without doing this. So I've been doing squats at the gym, so I can sit like this for 4 hours straight. You can extend your center column, but then you lose some rigidity. You know, it's a pain. A flip out LCD is helpful. You can kind of stand up straight. It's pretty difficult. A lot of tripods also don't really permit you to aim the camera straight up and down. So make sure your tripod has that ability. Like a panning tripod, you can go maybe like 70, 80 degrees up, but not the rest of the way. So again, small target in the big sky. We think the sun is gigantic. It is gigantic, but in the sky, it only looks big because everything around it is white. But once you point a filtered camera to it, you're going to realize how small that is. And then tracking. Because the Earth is rotating, the sun is going to continuously move out of your frame. Depends on your focal length, but how long it's going to take to leave your frame, but you're going to have to continuously reposition your camera or get a tracking rig that tracks it for you. And I think I talked about brightness, right? It's really bright. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for coming. Thank you.